mantra of backwards planning is to start with your goals and work backwards. And this is a fairly common and widely accepted principle in course development. It is not groundbreaking, but it was in response to an old method, where the old method was, if you're a subject matter expert, you create your content, your lectures, that kind of thing. You build some assessments based on those content, and then you deliver those assessments and kind of hope that something sticks. You hope that your students learn something. And this approach flips that on its head. It starts at the back. It starts with, what are your learning objectives? So in the first phase, in the first step, identify your learning objectives. What you're deciding is, what do you want your students to learn? And you make sure that those learning objectives are SMART. Then in the second step, you're determining acceptable evidence. So what is going to prove that my students learned what I wanted them to learn in step one, their learning objective? So I'll use a case study to make this a little more tangible. So let's say that you are building a course on negotiation. And let's say that one of your learning objectives is you want your students to be able to navigate a complex negotiation scenario using best practices. That's your learning objective. Well, how do you prove that your student has done that? Let's say that as a way to prove that your student has done that, you want to make sure that they have a working knowledge of those best practices and can apply those to a complex scenario. So let's say that they're able to use, to make this measurable, let's say that they're able to use 2 best practices effectively in a negotiation. That would be determining acceptable evidence. Your third step is to plan content that's going to deliver those learning objectives. So you'll plan content that goes over, again, this kind of negotiation course that goes over the concept of BATNA or ZOPA or other terms that are common in negotiation, and then plan assessments that are going to prove acceptable evidence. So you'll talk about your best practices. Maybe you'll talk about, 4 of them or so. You'll build an assessment that asks students to incorporate 2 of those into a hypothetical negotiation. And that's kind of how you follow this process from your learning objectives all the way into the actual content.